The Star Wars sequel trilogy has certainly received its fair share of backlash from fans of the galaxy far, far away. Although it has its moments, you can't deny the plot holes or lack of planning which it demonstrates. Today I'm going to share with you my picks for the top 10 worst things about the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Number 10. Luke, Han, and Leia never once appearing together in the same scene. Believe it or not, our three heroes from the original trilogy are actually never seen together all at once. If this isn't the biggest missed opportunity in storytelling, then I don't know what is. I mean, how often do you have a cultural phenomenon of a movie franchise with the opportunity to regroup the same cast 40 years later for a sequel and not put them all together for even one scene? I mean, nobody was asking them to take away the spotlight from the new characters, but still, you can't deny what a confusingly missed opportunity this was. And sadly, with the death of Carrie Fisher in 2016, we'll never get that chance again. Number 9. A story for another time. That never came. In Episode 7, The Force Awakens, we meet Maz Kanata, who is somehow in possession of Luke's old lightsaber, which was Anakin's before him. When Han Solo asks her where she got it, Maz simply replies, "A good question for another time."
Where'd you get that?
A good question for another time.
No kidding, that's a good question. Unfortunately, however, though, another time never came, because in episodes 8 and 9, we are never offered the explanation, and the plot of how Maz came to possess Luke's lost lightsaber remains a mystery to this day. Number 8. Anakin's Force Ghost not stepping in to prevent Kylo Ren's destruction. In Episode 7, The Force Awakens, Kylo makes it clear that he is attempting to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, continuing his legacy of using dark side powers to rule the galaxy in a sinister fashion.
Show me again the power of the darkness, and I will let nothing stand in our way, grandfather. And I will finish what you started.
However, in the movie before this, we see that upon dying, Anakin is turned into a Force ghost after feeling immense regret for his actions. So why didn't he ever step in as a Force ghost and have a chat with the young Kylo to steer him off the beaten path? And what makes this even more confusing is that at the end of Episode 9, we actually do hear Anakin's voice reach out to Rey in guidance. So, if he had the power to do this, then why in the world did he not reach out to his own grandson? Number 7. A recycled storyline. The overall conflict between the good guys and the bad guys is nearly identical from the sequel trilogy to the original trilogy. For all intents and purposes, it's quite literally the same thing, only the names have been changed. You swap Rebels for Resistance and Empire for First Order, and the conflict remains all too familiar. Instead of continuing on from where Episode 6 left off, they chose to instead create a revamped version of A New Hope, essentially taking the safe way out and relying purely on nostalgia for success, rather than creative writing. Not to mention, having the bad guys come right back into power here completely undoes everything Luke did in Episode 6 to restore peace. It makes it all for nothing, as well as tarnishes the prophecy of the Chosen One and Anakin's entire legacy. Number 6. The scene where Leia survives in space. In Episode 8, The Last Jedi, Leia's spaceship gets attacked, causing it to break apart and resulting in Leia being cast out into open space with no form of protection against the elements. Now, she seems to float there for a bit unharmed and then magically flies back to safety. Fans often joke about this as like a scene out of Mary Poppins or something. Anyways, the explanation given to us is that she used the Force to stay alive and then used the Force again to propel herself through space back indoors. Now, I won't deny that the Force is a powerful thing, but for most Star Wars fans, this scene took things a little too far. I mean, I don't care how Force sensitive one is, she would be dead. In addition, whatever it is that they were going for with this scene, it came across a little silly, in my opinion, and every time I see it, it completely just takes me right out of the movie. Number 5. Finn's lack of character development. What had the potential to be one of the literal coolest characters in Star Wars lore ended up being completely revamped and cast aside with less and less importance as the trilogy progressed. In Episode 7, The Force Awakens, we are introduced to a defected stormtrooper who escapes the First Order's clutches to join the Resistance, overcomes all odds and obstacles, and even has a brief lightsaber battle with Kylo Ren. As one of the primary characters in the sequel trilogy, Finn had all sorts of potential. I remember at the time we were thinking, like, was he maybe a Force sensitive who was captured by the First Order and had his mind wiped? Was he Force sensitive at all? The possibilities were pretty endless. Personally, I was even under the suspicion that Finn would maybe even become romantically involved with Rey at some point, which I think would have been super cool for the story. However, in episodes 8 and 9 of the trilogy, Finn's character saw little to no development whatsoever. No additional backstory was given of who he was, and really no real importance within the story at all. A complete waste of potential, and what's worse, a total 180 from the way he was originally portrayed in episode 7. The actor who played Finn, John Boyega, has even publicly expressed his discontent with the way his character was handled in various interviews. And who could blame him? Number 4. New Force powers taking things way too far. The sequel trilogy introduces all kinds of new Force powers, which completely contradict the previous two trilogies. For one, we are introduced to Force healing for the first time on the big screen, which allows the use of the Force to heal wounds, apparently even if the injury is fatal. Now, if this is possible, then why in the world didn't Obi-Wan use it back in episode 1 to heal Qui-Gon Jinn after their duel with Darth Maul before he died? It makes no sense why he wouldn't have done it, or at least tried to do it, right? Additionally, we are shown that Force ghosts can now use Force lightning and even hold lightsabers. Now, if this is the case, then why aren't all Force ghosts just helping out in every battle? And since the Force ghosts are no longer in danger of dying, the power to still interact with physical objects after death essentially just makes them invincible beings in any situation. It's cool, but it really doesn't line up with the rest of the saga. Number 3. Palpatine comes out of nowhere. In Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, we see the previously deceased Emperor Palpatine get shoehorned right back into the story, coming back from the dead, seemingly out of nowhere. As a viewer and Star Wars fan, it really feels like a haphazard move placing him back into the storyline like this, right after his dramatic death at the end of Episode 6, and also greatly diminishes the new villain, Snoke, who we came to grow accustomed to during Episodes 7 and 8. Now, we learned that Snoke was really just some sort of clone puppet all along, being controlled by Palpatine, but it really didn't feel that way during the first two films. Now, if they had built into this, or at least hinted at this storyline from the beginning of the trilogy in a supporting way, fans may have been able to come to terms with this idea. However, it was clearly just a final attempt to clean up messy writing, and kind of a lazy way to tie the saga in together with the other trilogies. And once again, it also completely destroys everything Luke fought for during the original trilogy, and just totally diminishes the prophecy of the Chosen One. Number 2. Luke's character arc. We all knew Luke Skywalker to be the hero of a generation. A small-town farm boy who, against all odds, joins the rebellion and defeats the evil Emperor, restoring peace to the galaxy. This story has inspired many of us in our own lives for decades. He has been a hero to turn to when we need it most, and even though fictional, a sense of hope or escape for many. So in Episode 8, The Last Jedi, when Luke tosses his lightsaber over his shoulder and chooses to live out his final days as a useless old man rather than fighting for the cause he once led, it was a complete disrespect to Star Wars fans who grew up idolizing this character. For the writers to belittle him in this way, it really goes against everything Star Wars stands for. Mark Hamill himself has even shared his own feelings towards this on several occasions, famously saying, "He's not my Luke Skywalker."
Luke would never say that. I'm sorry. Well, in this version, see, I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker.
I'll never forget the way my heart sank when seeing this in theaters for the first time, especially after the cliffhanger they gave us at the end of The Force Awakens. Now, sure, he redeems himself in the end, but the real Luke Skywalker would have never done this in the first place. And also, don't even get me started on his thoughts of murdering his nephew. Again, the real Luke would never do this. You know, like, I don't want to sound too harsh, but it honestly kind of makes you wonder if the writers had even seen the other Star Wars movies. Number 1. Rey taking the name Skywalker. In the final moments of the sequel trilogy, an old woman asks Rey who she is. She replies, "I'm Rey, Rey Skywalker," even though she's not a Skywalker.
Who are you? I'm Rey Skywalker.
Now, I'm all for people choosing their own destiny. I think that's great. But for me, it does not make it okay in this situation for her to all of a sudden christen herself as a Skywalker. You know, she is a super cool character, but this really just seems like another example of them trying to forcefully tie the sequel trilogy into the other trilogies after a lot of poor planning. And don't get me wrong, I'll be the first to say I quite enjoy Rey on screen. The actor Daisy Ridley did an amazing job, was extremely charismatic throughout the films, perfectly cast, definitely loved her in the movies. But having her call herself a Skywalker here, for me it just seems like the easy way out in an attempt to close off a rather discombobulated trilogy. I mean, she's not related by blood, has nothing to do with Anakin, and hardly anything to do with Luke, even if we're being honest. You know, it's a nice scene to end the trilogy with, but when you stop to think about it, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And those are my top 10 issues with the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Now, I just want to say it's not all bad. I mean, there are certainly many cool moments in these movies. The sound design is spectacular, the cinematography is world class. You know, there's a lot of cool things, and I could just as easily make another video about my top 10 favorite things about the sequels. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. But my question for you today is, do you agree with these statements? Was I too harsh, or did I miss anything? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, may the Force be with you.